We were alone on a broken transport. Now the alien girl wants to pass the time. The transport ship, a small but sturdy vessel, had been his responsibility for years, carrying supplies between distant outposts in the outer sectors of the galaxy. Usually the work was quiet, uneventful, and predictable, but today nothing was normal. A sharp jolt rocked the ship, throwing Eli forward in his seat. Alarms wailed as the power core shuddered and the lights flickered. He cursed under his breath. "Meteor strike, small but bad timing," he muttered. He had no choice but to check the damage manually. As he moved toward the passenger bay, the doors slid open with a reluctant hiss. The room was empty, or so he thought. A small figure sat cross-legged on the floor, watching him with large, iridescent eyes that seemed to reflect every blinking warning light in the room. The figure was humanoid but not human. Her skin shimmered faintly, pale blue in color, and delicate markings traced her arms and face. Two small, curved appendages extended from her head, almost like antennae. "You wake up," she said in a melodic voice, the words strange but understandable. Eli froze, his mind racing. What are you?" "I am Lyra," she said, tilting her head in curiosity. "I was traveling." Eli blinked. "Traveling on my ship?" Lyra nodded, then smiled, a gesture both innocent and oddly alien. "Yes, I was meant for study, but now we are alone." Alone. The word struck him harder than the alarms ever could. He had suspected something like this could happen in uncharted space, but nothing could prepare him for the reality. The engine was dead. The navigation system was offline. They were stranded. Eli knelt carefully to meet her eyes. "I'm the engineer. I keep this ship running." You're not supposed to be here, but I guess we'll have to figure it out." Lyra clapped her hands softly and her eyes sparkled. "Yes, we will pass the time." Eli's stomach tightened. "Pass the time? You mean survive?" She laughed lightly, a sound like wind chimes. "Yes, survive, but also play." Eli shook his head, unsure how to respond. He had faced malfunctions, storms, even pirates, but a playful alien in a broken ship was a new experience. He sighed and moved to the main console, beginning the tedious work of assessing the damage. Hours passed as Eli worked tirelessly. The meteor had damaged several key components: minor hull breaches, a damaged power regulator, and critical engine circuits fried by the strike. Repairing them would take time they did not have if the drift continued. Lyra, meanwhile, followed him around, mimicking his movements. She touched every switch and panel, tilting her head at the strange symbols and numbers. "Why do humans press buttons like this?" she asked. Eli gave a wry smile. "Because it works." He tightened a panel screw and stood back. "Sometimes you just have to trust the machine and yourself." Lyra crouched down and studied his hands. "Trust yourself, interesting. I will try." She pressed a small button on the console. Sparks flew. Eli jumped back. "Not like that," he shouted, grabbing her hand gently. "See, you have to do it carefully. Humans and machines are both fragile sometimes." Lyra's eyes widened. "Fragile, I understand, but also strong," Eli nodded. "Exactly, that's humans." He chuckled softly. "You'll learn, little one." Despite the tension, Eli felt a strange warmth. There was something fascinating about Lyra's curiosity. Unlike humans who often followed routines, she explored without fear, without hesitation. Her mind worked differently, and that difference made every small action she took unpredictable and enlightening. By evening, the ship's artificial lights bathed the cabin in a soft glow. Eli had managed to patch the hull breaches and stabilize the life support. The engine would take longer, but at least they were alive. He sank into the pilot's chair, exhausted, and Lyra sat beside him, her knees drawn up. "Tell me about your world," she said softly. Eli blinked. "Earth, or just humans in general?" "Both." "I want to know what makes you strong." He smiled faintly, the first genuine smile of the day. "Humans are curious, I guess. We don't give up easily. We fix things even when it seems impossible. We survive. That's how we get through the worst." Lyra tilted her head, studying him. Survive, curious, strong, I see. Humans are clever. Eli leaned back. Clever, yes, that's one way to put it. He paused, then added, but we also get lonely. That's why, well, it's good to have company. Lyra's eyes lit up. I can be company, we can pass the time together. Eli laughed softly, a tired but genuine sound. I suppose we have no choice. Night, or what passed for night on the ship, fell. Lyra floated in zero gravity, watching Eli carefully. She mimicked his stretching motions, then tried doing flips, giggling when she miscalculated and bumped the wall. Eli shook his head. Be careful, this ship isn't a playground. But you are careful, she said. I will learn. Humans are careful, clever, alive. As she spoke, Eli noticed her fingers brushing against a panel of alien tech embedded in the ship. He had never seen it before. Small, glowing buttons and symbols blinked as if waiting for interaction. Lyra, maybe not yet, he warned. We don't know what that does. She smiled mischievously. Curiosity, humans love it. I love it too. Eli sighed. He should have been stricter, but something about her reminded him of a child, innocent, bold, and fearless. All right, but no dangerous experiments, he said. Lyra tilted her head and nodded. Safe, mostly. She giggled softly, drifting closer to the panel. We can pass the time safely, I think. Hours turned into a strange rhythm of work and play. Eli repaired, calibrated, and adjusted, while Lyra explored, learned, and occasionally sabotaged unintentionally. During one quiet moment, Eli sat on the floor beside her. Tell me, do you like humans? He asked. Lyra's eyes sparkled with a strange mixture of innocence and insight. Yes, humans are strange, fragile and clever, funny, curious, strong in ways I do not yet fully understand. Eli felt a swell of pride. Even in isolation, he realized humanity had left its mark, not through power, not through fear, but through intellect and adaptability. She leaned closer. And you are clever. He chuckled softly, brushing a hand over his tired face. I try my best. Lyra floated to the small observation window and pressed her hands against it. Outside, the nebula shimmered in muted colors, gases and light twisting like a cosmic painting. Beautiful, humans, see beauty even in danger. Eli looked at her, amazed at her observation. Yes, we try to. Beauty reminds us why we survive. A long silence fell between them, broken only by the occasional creak of the ship or the distant hum of failing systems. Eli realized then that they were no longer just engineer and passenger. They were companions, sharing the same fragile vessel in a vast, empty galaxy. Late into the night, Lyra floated down to sit beside him once more. If we are to be alone, we should pass the time together, she said softly, almost shyly. Eli swallowed. Pass the time how? She smiled, a small, sly, and utterly alien smile. Games, learning, stories, surprises. He couldn't help but laugh. Surprises, huh? You might regret that, little one. Lyra's eyes sparkled. Maybe, but it will be fun. Eli shook his head, smiling despite exhaustion. I have a feeling you're right. This is going to be interesting. As he turned back to the control panels, he realized something remarkable. In this broken transport, adrift and isolated, he was not alone. And maybe, just maybe, this alien girl would teach him as much about life as he would teach her about humanity. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, indifferent yet magnificent, as the transport floated silently through the nebula. Inside, a human and an alien prepared to pass the time together, curious, clever, and very much alive. The transport floated silently through the nebula, the stars outside like scattered jewels on black velvet. Inside, the ship hummed faintly, its systems patched enough to keep life support functional and engines at a limping standby. Eli sat at the main console, scanning the displays for anomalies. He had hoped the day would be quiet, a chance to rest after the long hours of repair. He was wrong. Lyra, the alien girl, floated down from the observation deck, her movements graceful and fluid. Her eyes glimmered with curiosity, and the faint markings on her skin pulsed with soft light, reflecting her excitement. "Eli," she said softly, "I have ideas to pass the time." He groaned, rubbing his temples. "Ideas I'm almost afraid to ask." Lyra tilted her head. "I promise, mostly harmless. Mostly." Eli gave her a cautious glance, but curiosity, the same trait that had kept humans alive across millennia, made him nod. "All right, mostly harmless. Show me what you have in mind." Lyra began with what she called games of thought. She had watched Eli work for hours, studying his patterns, gestures, and expressions. Now she challenged him with small puzzles, arranging panels in the correct order, balancing floating tools in zero gravity, and predicting sequences of flashing lights. At first, Eli laughed. "This is just like teaching a student, except the student might explode the ship." Lyra grinned, her teeth small and sharp. "Not explode, mostly." He rolled his eyes, but a part of him was fascinated. Her mind worked in ways he could not anticipate. She connected concepts in ways humans might overlook, her logic both alien and brilliant. Every time Eli solved one of her challenges, she added a twist. "Now," she said suddenly, floating close to a panel of alien tech embedded in the ship, "we can try more advanced tests." Eli stiffened. That panel had been there since the ship's mysterious acquisition months ago, and he had avoided it deliberately. Its symbols and circuits were clearly not human-made, and one wrong touch could short the entire system. "Lyra, I don't think." "Trust me," she interrupted, her eyes gleaming. Before he could stop her, she pressed a series of buttons. Sparks flickered, the lights dimmed, and a low hum of energy filled the compartment. Eli leapt to the controls, stabilizing the ship just before alarms screamed. "See," Lyra said cheerfully, "mostly harmless." Eli exhaled slowly, trying not to panic. "Mostly yes, but we need to be careful. That panel, it's sensitive, very sensitive." Lyra tilted her head. "I see, but humans are clever. You can fix anything. I want to see how clever." And so began a delicate dance of chaos and ingenuity. Eli repaired, adjusted, and stabilized, while Lyra experimented, learning from every mistake. Each misstep forced Eli to anticipate the unexpected, to adapt quickly, and to think creatively under pressure. As hours passed, they drifted into a strange rhythm. Eli taught her how to operate the ship safely, how to balance oxygen levels, monitor energy consumption, and reroute power if a system failed. Lyra, in turn, introduced him to concepts he could not fully comprehend: alien methods of energy storage, strange mathematical patterns, and ideas for optimizing systems in ways humans rarely considered. "Why do humans do things slowly?" she asked one evening, floating upside down beside him as he checked the power conduits. Eli chuckled. "We take our time to avoid mistakes. Sometimes speed gets us into trouble." Lyra frowned. "But speed is exciting, efficient." "Humans could be better." "Maybe," Eli admitted, "but humans survive because we adapt, not because we're fastest. Sometimes patience is more important than speed." Lyra nodded slowly, considering his words. "Humans clever, patient, survive." She smiled. "I will remember this." Their companionship grew deeper. Eli found himself telling her stories about Earth, oceans, mountains, deserts, and the strange creatures that inhabited them. Lyra listened, her head tilted, absorbing every word, then adding her own alien perspective. "Humans live on water and land. How strange. Fragile yet clever," she said one evening. Eli smiled. "Yes, but we make the best of it. Adaptation is our strength." Lyra's eyes shone. "I understand humans are resilient, clever, alive." It was a small moment, but it left Eli feeling proud. Alone in a broken ship, he realized humanity's essence: curiosity, ingenuity, and resilience was evident even to someone completely alien. But not everything was simple or calm. One day, Lyra discovered a small compartment in the cargo hold that Eli had never seen before. Inside were tiny alien devices, glowing softly with unknown energy. Lyra's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Look," she exclaimed. "Human cleverness is limited. Let me explore." Eli's stomach sank. "Lyra, maybe we shouldn't touch those. We don't know what they do." "But curiosity, humans are curious. You taught me," she said, grinning. Before he could protest, she touched the devices. A sudden surge of energy hummed through the ship. Lights flickered, panels beeped erratically, and a faint smell of ozone filled the air. "Lyra!" Eli shouted, rushing to stabilize the systems. He quickly rerouted power, grounding circuits and preventing further damage. Lyra floated nearby, wide-eyed but excited. "Mostly harmless," she said softly, and Eli could only groan. "You're learning too fast," he muttered, "and causing chaos while at it." Lyra tilted her head, a playful smile forming. "Chaos teaches cleverness. Humans survive through cleverness." Eli realized she was right in her alien way. Each mistake forced him to think, to improvise, to demonstrate human adaptability in real time. And somehow, they were surviving. Not just surviving, but learning from each other. One evening, as the ship drifted through a particularly colorful region of the nebula, life support began fluctuating. Oxygen levels dropped slightly and alarms blared. Eli dashed to the main console, hands flying over controls. "Lyra!" he shouted. "We need to stabilize life support now." She floated beside him, eyes wide. "What can I do?" "Follow my instructions carefully," he commanded. "We can fix this, but only together." For the first time, Lyra seemed serious. She mimicked his hand movements, pressed buttons in sequence, and adjusted small levers. Eli guided her, speaking in calm, measured tones despite his racing heart. Slowly, the hum of the ship steadied, and the oxygen levels returned to normal. Eli leaned back, panting. "Good work, you did exactly what I asked, perfectly." Lyra smiled faintly. "Humans clever, patient, alive. I understand a little more." Eli looked at her, amazed at the bond forming. They were more than engineer and passenger. They were partners, learning from each other in a silent, drifting ship far from civilization. Days passed in a mixture of work, play, and conversation. Lyra floated through the ship, creating small games to test both their wits. Sometimes she hid tools and watched him solve the problem. Other times she challenged him to create patterns of floating objects in zero gravity without touching the floor. Eli learned patience, adaptability, and a strange sense of joy he hadn't felt in years. Lyra, in turn, observed human behavior with fascination. Laughter, frustration, clever improvisation, and the deep-rooted desire to survive. She began to imitate him, not just physically, but emotionally. She smiled when he smiled, frowned when he frowned, and even tried to predict his responses in various situations. "You humans complex," she said one evening. "Fragile, clever, alive. I like humans." Eli laughed softly. "I like you too, Lyra. Most aliens I've met wouldn't survive 2 minutes in this ship without me yelling at them." She tilted her head, curious. "But humans survive in any place. You adapt, learn, overcome. Clever." Eli nodded. "Exactly, that's what keeps us alive." Late one night, as the ship floated silently through the colorful nebula, Lyra whispered, drifting closer. "Eli, if we are to be alone, we should pass the time forever." He paused, a shiver running down his spine. "Forever? That's a long time." Lyra's eyes sparkled. "Time does not matter. Only curiosity, learning, games, companionship." Eli smiled faintly, exhausted but filled with warmth. "You may be right. If we're stuck here, we may as well make the most of it." For the first time, he realized that being stranded, broken, and isolated might not be entirely bad. With Lyra's alien curiosity and his human ingenuity, they were learning, surviving, and even in a small way, thriving. Outside, the nebula glimmered, indifferent to the tiny human and alien floating inside a broken ship. Inside, however, a bond had formed that neither distance, danger, nor isolation could break. Eli leaned back in his chair, watching Lyra float through the cabin, rearranging small floating tools just for fun. He thought about the future, the repairs that would be needed, the unknown dangers ahead. But for now, he allowed himself a rare sense of calm. They were alone, yes, but they were alive. And together they would pass the time, learning, laughing, surviving, and discovering that even in isolation, humans could shine brightest when tested. The transport creaked and hummed as it drifted through the soft glow of the nebula. Eli had spent days patching, recalibrating, and improvising. The engine still limped, but for now it kept them afloat and life support was steady. Outside, the stars shone like distant lanterns, but inside the ship, two unlikely companions had grown inseparable. Lyra floated near the observation window, her fingers tracing the shimmering patterns of the nebula as if she were painting them in the air. Her eyes glimmered with fascination. "Eli," she said softly, "humans are clever, patient, alive." Eli smiled, tired but proud. "We try our best," he said. "Sometimes surviving is more about patience than strength." Lyra tilted her head, thoughtful. "I understand now. Humans survive because you think, because you care, because you adapt." Eli nodded. "Exactly, and you've been learning too." "I'm impressed." Lyra floated closer, her eyes bright. "I want to learn more, about humans, about survival, about passing the time." Eli chuckled softly. "Then I guess we still have work to do." Days turned into a strange harmony of survival, curiosity, and playful learning. Lyra continued to devise games and puzzles, each more complex than the last. She floated through the ship, experimenting with zero-gravity movements and alien logic, while Eli solved the problems she created, often improvising solutions that tested both patience and ingenuity. One day, Lyra discovered a small compartment in the rear of the ship, long overlooked. Inside were several devices that seemed alien even to her, glowing faintly with unknown energy. "Look," she exclaimed. "I wonder what humans would do with these." Eli's stomach sank. "Lyra, those are dangerous. We don't know what they do. Please don't touch them." "But curiosity," she said, her eyes sparkling. "Humans are curious. You taught me." Before Eli could stop her, she pressed a sequence of buttons. Sparks flew and the ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared and the lights flickered. Eli lunged to stabilize the systems, his hands moving quickly over the panels. "Mostly harmless," he shouted. Lyra tilted her head innocently. "Mostly," Eli groaned but couldn't help smiling. Every challenge, every little chaos she caused, reminded him why humans survived. Because they could think, adapt, and improvise under pressure. Later, as the ship floated silently through the nebula, the faint shimmer of a distant signal appeared on the main console. Eli's heart skipped a beat. "Signal, another ship. They're nearby." Lyra tilted her head. "Nearby, do you want to leave this place?" Eli hesitated. For days they had survived together, learning from each other, but he knew rescue was essential. "Yes, but I don't want to lose the time we've spent together." Lyra floated closer, her eyes reflecting the soft lights of the console. "Time does not matter. Curiosity, games, learning, companionship that matters." Eli smiled faintly. "You've learned well, Lyra. Humans leave a mark even when alone." When the rescue ship finally arrived, Eli hailed them. The response was efficient but formal. They had located the lost transport drifting in the nebula and were prepared to tow them to the nearest station. Lyra, however, floated near Eli with a strange mix of excitement and reluctance. "Eli, do we really need to go? The ship, the games, the learning, it is enjoyable." Eli placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "We need to survive. But that doesn't mean the games, the learning, or our bond has to end." Lyra tilted her head. "Humans, clever, patient, alive. I like humans, I will remember." The rescue team boarded, and Eli guided them through the patch systems. Lyra watched silently, absorbing every action, every adjustment he made. She noted how humans adapted, solved problems, and communicated even under stress. "Commander," Eli said to the rescue captain, "Lyra is with me. She's been learning human ways. She's exceptional." The captain raised an eyebrow. Exceptional? You mean alien companion aboard a human ship? Yes, Eli said firmly. She's learned a lot from us, and I believe she's changed too. We don't just survive through tech. We survive through patience, curiosity, and teamwork. She understands that now. The captain paused, then nodded. Very well, temporary arrangement approved. Lyra's eyes widened. Temporary? Ah, I understand. Humans, clever, kind. Once the rescue team secured the ship, Eli and Lyra prepared to depart. The transport had been patched enough for limited travel, and Lyra had begun documenting human problem-solving, laughter, and creativity in ways that would fascinate her own species. You've done well, Lyra, Eli said softly. Even in chaos, you've learned. You've grown. Lyra floated closer, her hands brushing against his in an alien gesture of closeness. And you, humans, clever, patient, alive. You survived, guided, taught, shared with me. I am grateful. Eli smiled. That's what humans do. We survive, but we also share knowledge, help each other, and leave marks on those we meet. That's part of being alive. Lyra's eyes glimmered. I will remember humans forever. As the rescue ship began towing the transport toward the nearest station, Eli and Lyra sat together in the passenger bay, watching the nebula drift past the window. You know, Eli said, being stranded like this, I thought it would be lonely, scary, and stressful. But with you it's been different, enjoyable even, Lyra smiled, floating gracefully beside him. Yes, humans, clever, alive, resilient, I have learned much, and you taught me patience, ingenuity, companionship. Eli nodded. That's what humans are good at. Even when alone, we survive. We adapt, we connect. Lyra tilted her head. Connection, humans, strong, alive. I understand. Over the next few days, the transport continued its slow journey with the rescue team's guidance. Eli and Lyra spent every moment exploring, learning, and playing small games. She experimented with alien devices under his careful supervision, learning to balance curiosity with caution. See, Eli said one day, smiling as Lyra carefully activated a harmless panel sequence. You're learning to be clever and careful. Lyra's eyes sparkled. Clever, careful, alive. Humans amazing. Eli chuckled softly. So are you. You've changed too, not just because of me, but because you've watched, adapted, and learned. That's what makes humans shine. Lyra floated closer, almost shyly. I like humans, I like you. I could pass the time forever. Eli smiled, feeling a rare warmth in his chest. Forever might be too long, but for now, yes, we can pass the time. When the rescue team finally guided them to the station, Lyra reluctantly prepared to leave the transport. She had learned much about humans: curiosity, ingenuity, patience, and the quiet courage to survive without violence. She had also learned about connection, the way humans could bond, teach, and inspire across species. Eli, she said softly, floating beside him, I will remember humans, your cleverness, your patience, your heart. You survived and you taught me. I am grateful. Eli nodded, touched. And you reminded me that even in isolation, humans can shine. We don't just survive, we adapt, we teach, we connect. That's our strength. Lyra smiled faintly, an alien gesture that carried warmth. Humans, clever, patient, alive. I will tell my people. You extraordinary. With that, she allowed the rescue team to guide her away, her gaze never leaving Eli until she disappeared from sight. Eli stood alone on the transport's deck, watching the stars drift past. The nebula shimmered softly, indifferent to the tiny human and alien who had shared a broken ship, chaos, and companionship. He reflected on the past days, the games, the learning, the laughter, and even the small disasters. Humans survived, not just because of technology, speed, or strength, but because of curiosity, patience, and the ability to connect with others, even across species. Even alone, humanity left a mark on the universe. He smiled softly. She'll remember, and so will I. As the station's lights grew closer, signaling safety, Eli prepared to continue his journey. The transport was patched, the engines limping but functional and his mind buzzed with possibilities. Alone or not, humans thrived wherever they went, clever, patient, adaptable, alive. And somewhere out there, Lyra carried that lesson back to her people. For Eli, the adventure was over, but the memory of passing the time with an alien girl, teaching, learning, and surviving together, would remain forever. And perhaps in some corner of the galaxy, a strange, curious alien girl would look at the stars and think of humans. Clever, patient, alive, and worth admiring.